What's going on, and welcome to Joe's Geek Show, the video series where we talk comics. And before we get started, if you'd like to support the channel, you can do so by hitting that subscribe button, clicking the like button, and sharing. And with that, The Flash, issue 758. And this book is written by Joshua Williamson with art by Christian Deuce and Scott Collins, colors by Hi-Fi and Luis Guerrero, and letters by Steve Wands. And this book starts with the fallout from the attack of the Legion of Zoom from the previous issue, as Barry, Kid Flash, and Avery rush to help as many people as they can. We then cut to Barry standing in his crime lab a little bit later when Iris tries to comfort him, but he says to get ahead of Thawne, he has to think like him. The book then shifts to the Legion of Zoom as the villains share their distrust of Thawne, when the trickster asks why they even listen to the evil speedster, but is then pressed against the wall by the Reverse Flash and tells everyone that good things come to those that do what he says, getting them back in line. During this time, Barry prepares his loved ones to depart and even getting his dad to a secret location before heading to his childhood home where his mother was killed. While looking around, Barry is suddenly greeted and then attacked by his children, the Tornado Twins, who blast him out of the house, and while they have him distracted, he's punched by Gorilla Grodd. And before Barry can get back to his feet, he's hit once more by the twins and then has some of his power siphoned off by the turtle, making him completely helpless. Thawne then reveals himself as well as his ultimate plan. He knew it wasn't enough to try and pretend to be Barry Allen, but rather, he must become Barry Allen himself. Eobard then vibrates his body and enters Barry's, assuming control of the Scarlet Speedster. The Legion of Zoom at first is confused by this plan as they thought they were going to kill the Flash, not have Eobard Thawne assume control of him. And Gorilla Grodd had even pointed out that Eobard Thawne had promised them knowledge of the future, to which Eobard inside Barry's body said, they'll get that and more, but first, he has to take care of his family. As he speeds off before we then shift back to Barry, floating in an empty space of energy, as he is then, out of nowhere, attacked by the corpses of Max Mercury and Jesse Quick. And I'd be lying if I said that as an individual comic that I didn't find this interesting. However, as part of an overall story that was supposed to have been building since the first issue, not so much. Let's start with the positives. I do like the fact that Barry Allen actually has to face the consequences and failures of his decisions from bringing Thawne from the past. The current predicament that the Scarlet Speedster finds himself in is his fault, and I do like the sentiment of Barry wanting to protect his family and thus kind of scooting off Iris, Kid Flash, and Avery. Though of course at that point I'm also like, Kid Flash and Avery, two speedsters that you really could have used against Thawne and all of the other Legion of Zoom that he's assembled. And at long last, I am so happy that we got to see the Tornado Twins in action, because they weren't in the previous issue, so I'm sitting here thinking like, okay, they've got to show up in this issue, and I will say, that definitely did not disappoint. I also like the reasoning and rationale about why they are the way they are, because, I mean, after Crisis and Barry vanished, they were more or less left alone, and then even when Barry did come back to life, he forgot about him. At which point, Eobard Thawne inserted himself into the situation and more or less became the father that they were looking for. But I do think that they are still a bit of a wild card, and Iris is still going to play a strong plot point here. And I seem to still be stuck on the idea that Iris could quite potentially die here. And what can I say about Thawne's plans? It's sadistic as per usual, but I just keep thinking about the mass carnage that he could create, and most people would think it's the Flash. Like, in one fell swoop, he can just completely destroy the Flash's reputation. The only thing that I think might be keeping him from doing that is wanting to, again, become the Flash, become the hero. Well, at least his version of it. But now we're gonna hit the criticisms a little bit. So I can understand Barry kind of being off his game a little bit, because Thawne has assembled some of the Flash's enemies, and they've really attacked Barry Allen on a personal level. But Barry has done battle with Thawne time and time again, and I understand the idea about getting into his head. In order to try to sort of get ahead of his plan, he inadvertently ends up walking into a trap. And I think after so many encounters with Thawne, he may have had enough forethought or foresight into a situation to not do that. And then, of course, we know the end result of Thawne's plan, but let's talk a little bit about how we got to this point. So Thawne's plan started with him requiring Barry to go back to the night that his mother died in order to grab him in the first place. Because even though Barry was dealing with Paradox and needed Eobard Thawne in order to defeat Paradox, I still find it rather unlikely that this would be a particular moment that he would absolutely have to go to without a shadow of a doubt, as Thawne has existed in multiple points in time, and I still don't understand why Barry had to pick that night specifically. Because what would have happened if Barry had just picked a different night? I mean, it's been proven that Eobard essentially has a shared memory across all points in time with himself, so maybe it really didn't matter what point in time, but the book suggested that this was the most opportunistic moment. And I do think that thought wasn't conveyed well enough. And Thawne's plans overall kind of operate at certain things happening at certain times to get certain responses. I mean, Eobard does know Barry very well, but even so, Barry's still a person and could, go outside the lines of what Eobard is thinking. Because, for example, like, how long were they actually sitting in that house? I mean, I guess because we didn't see the Tornado Twins the last issue, maybe they were just chilling in that house the whole time? Like, were they just sitting down playing Scrabble until they heard Barry come through the door? And of course, you have the Turtle, Gorilla Grodd, Captain Cold, Golden Glider. I mean, after their attacks, were they just, like, hiding behind the bushes? I mean, it kind of reads like if just any random wrench was thrown into Eobard's plan, the whole thing could have derailed. Like, what if Barry had used Kid Flash and Avery? Did Eobard maybe account for that as well? So what it all essentially for me boils down to is that as a standalone story, I actually am finding it quite enjoyable, but when tying it in with the rest of this Flash series, I do find it rather flawed. And I really think what we have here is a moment where Joshua Williamson was focusing on the bigger picture rather than focusing on the minor details that matter. So I would say if you're a casual comic book reader and you do like The Flash, you actually may have a really good time here. But if you're a story nut who likes to have the stories, not so much tied up in like a really neat bow, but at least relatively coherent, you might be a little frustrated here. And with that, I'm going to give The Flash issue 758 a 7.5 out of 10. So The Flash issue 758, have you read this book? I would love to hear your thoughts. Please leave your comments in the comment section below. And if you like this video, I'd love it if you'd smash that like button, share it with some friends, subscribe if you're not subscribed already, and ring that notification bell for more comic book content. And if you're wondering what to watch next, consider one of these two videos. And don't forget to check out the rest of the videos in this Flash Volume 5 playlist that you can check out right up here. Alright, take care, have a great day, and as always, stay geeky.